What's good, everybody? This is the first ever episode, or whatever you want to call it, of Upstate Reviews. We're doing our first ever Upstate review. We've got a full-length album sent to us by our guy JeRk. He sent it in. He sent me actually a physical copy, so I'm very excited to get a chance to get the early listen. You might have caught a couple of his singles. He had Let's Talk About release early, so you can go stream that single now, but we have the full-length project. We're going to play it. We're going to listen to it. We're not going to play the whole thing, obviously, on the stream, but we're going to play some of it, let you guys hear a little bit of it, give our thoughts on it. I'm very interested to see. I love some of JeRk's stuff. I don't love some of JeRk's stuff, so you will get a very honest review. And I'm excited. I'm excited to do this for the first time, our first ever Upstate review. I think this could be a really cool thing. If you have a physical project you'd like to send in, we'll go ahead and review it. We'll also review any projects you might have on DSPs. Rather do stuff early, that way we can promote a project that's coming up. But we will go back at times and listen to some old stuff and probably do this with some of the projects that we really, really like as well. So here's the CD from JeRk. Shout out to him for sending that our way. Go ahead and pop this in there and see what we got here, huh? Alright, so the first track we got off of eGo is Rider Like You. Gonna give this a listen, see what you think. See what I think.
Ride with me, cruise with me, spin the block, taking the fuse with me, prove to me that no matter what, it's us. If it's him, I gotta go. With a rider like you.
Alright, so we open up with Rider Like You. That's our introduction track. That was alright. That was pretty dope. I think that it was a little bit long. I feel like you probably could have cut off the last minute or so of that track and more conform to what is custom to today's type of sound, I think. And that might have been a little bit better of an introduction. I do like that sound, though. It kind of reminds me of some Yellow Wolf type vibes, I would say. But I don't generally like Yellow Wolf, but I appreciated that track. So maybe not necessarily all the way in that lane. You see a lot of growth here with JeRk. The one thing that I also am a little bit confused about, you could say, is the track, or the project, I should say, is titled eGo. This is very much about his girlfriend. Definitely doesn't feel like a guy going big about his ego. Maybe we'll get that more throughout this project. The rest of the project doesn't seem to be as long of tracks either, so probably won't have as many of issues with the length of tracks. I think the production was really good. I think that JeRk might have done the production for the entire project. I know he has done production for some of these tracks. The next track we're going to play, he did the production for, so I'm assuming he might have done the production for the entire thing. If not, still pretty solid production, nothing too out of this world, but also keeping it simple can work really well with something like this. I think this was a really good introduction by JeRk. Let's play Let's Talk About It. I've heard this one before, the only track I've heard before, so I'm excited to hear this.
Talk about love, talk about late night sex and clubs. Addicted to your love, and drugging is not enough. Nothing like us, you and me, please, let's talk about.
That's Let's Talk About It. The second track, a snippet of that one. That one was I really like that track. I'm a sucker for tracks that feel like they could easily fit in somewhere in a movie. Like, you want to see a music video to this because it feels like, to me, like just like a good springtime summer camp type vibe. Like, it's definitely Sheridan from the Cypher podcast would definitely reference how this is more of something you might hear on the end of a Disney Channel original movie. I was someone who grew up on Disney Channel original movies, so maybe that's why I like this so much. But I think that JeRk did a really good job with this. I do still have to very much question the aesthetic that he's putting off with the cover art and the name of the project, and then the content we're getting. He doesn't seem like a guy who has a massive ego at this point. He seems like a cool dude who likes his girlfriend and likes to hang out and chill and smoke some bud and drink some beers, and seems like a pretty cool guy. So I'm not really getting the ego vibe from him yet, which is like super cool by me. But it's still pretty cool music. I really like where we're going with this. Just wondering if the aesthetic of the cover matches what we're getting, and maybe that will change up a little bit throughout this project. I almost hope not, because I like this sound up to this point. I think that JeRk's doing a really good job at giving us something we are maybe not super accustomed to hearing from him either. So let's play his next track. We got Lessons in Love.
Hey, my reflections way to shame me and me a lot, because I never had a chance to explain all them lies. Never had a red wipe the tears that you cry. I'm addicted to the pain. Can't you see it in my eyes? Can't take away what you've seen if you try.
That was Lessons in Love, the third track on this project. I wasn't feeling that one per se. It was definitely a shift in sound from what we got on the first two tracks. So if you weren't feeling the first two tracks, maybe you would be feeling this one a little bit more. It just necessarily wasn't for me. There were parts that I really did like. I liked the hook, and then some of the verses were really there for me. But then other parts of it weren't necessarily there for me. I don't really look at JeRk as an overly lyrical artist. He's not bad lyrically. I'm not saying that he's even horrible or bad lyrically at all, but in terms of like great lyricism, I don't look for that from JeRk. And so when you get a track like this, where I'm not really feeling like we're emphasizing as many of his finer qualities, and more so probably looking at some of the the stuff that isn't as great that he does. And so this track wasn't for me. The production on this obviously wasn't his. You heard the tags on there, so that tells us he hasn't produced the entire project. But there was also some issues, I think, with the mixing in terms of the verses there, that you definitely heard a change between the hook and the verses. So this is definitely the standout one in terms of stuff that I didn't necessarily like on this project. I do think that this could be for other people, because I don't necessarily know that the first two were for everyone. They were just something that I like. So we got track number 4, Baker Man, up next.
Like a baker man, I like Gucci, I like Prada, I like Dolce & Gabbana, I like Fendi, I like Louis, I like Mimi's mixed with rubies. I like dough, with my money so big it go. I'm counting up the dough. A lot of people, man. Like a baker man.
So we got Baker Man there by JeRk. The beginning, I was into that. I even don't like, sometimes I mean, it's tough when you're quoting something. I think that was like a Drake line, and maybe line used prior to Drake before. It's a similar. I've heard stuff like that before in hip hop, and it sounded fine when JeRk did it. But in terms of the beginning, it's very hard to live up to that. And I think that for some people, they might really like the hook. I did not like the hook at all. The verses were good. I thought they were all right lyrically. Like I said, it's not necessarily what I'm going here for. So if it not being up to par really doesn't bother me. It was a okay track. I think this probably, like, some people will probably really like this based upon this kind of sound. But for me, it wasn't hitting it at all. And in the beginning, it really was. I thought this was, but again, it's tough when you can build up that type of hype at the beginning. You got to just bring it, and I don't feel like that's what it was for me. So let's move on to the next track. We got Flex by JeRk.
Wanna see you flex. Summertime quarantine 2020. Flex on this guy. Yeah, I wanna see you flex. Flex on the gram with them hundreds in your hand. Yeah.
Alright, so we got Flex. I at the beginning of this, I think I said that I've only heard Let's Talk About It before this. At the beginning of this song, I recognize I've heard this one before as well. I don't know if he's released it. I know I heard it for a competition episode of The Cypher. The hook is not for me at all. I think that the verses are okay. I think that Deshaun is featured on this, and he does a pretty decent job. He did a pretty good job. I like the feature in this song. I think that this takes me back to the first track, where it was a longer song. We probably could have benefited from a feature on that track. This one was good with a feature. I do think that the hook just wasn't for me. The flex. Like, I get it, I guess. Like, that's the slang and stuff, but I thought it doesn't hit for me. I think it can probably connect for a certain type of crowd, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just not for me. I think that the verses were pretty good though. I think that the verses were all right, but the hook just wasn't there for me. All right, so up next we got "Fake Love" from JeRk. So let's see what this is all about.
Whether it was to die, got this fake love, got this fake
That was "Fake Love." That didn't really hit for me. There were definitely parts in the mix that weren't necessarily it for me, but then just the feature, the hook, there just wasn't a whole lot to that one that I really loved. I could see people enjoying that one, but definitely not for me. Yeah, I think that I get where JeRk is going with some of these tracks, but I referenced Yellow Wolf early on, and I think he might even make tracks like this, and this might be why I'm not super fond of Yellow Wolf, because this type of sound, and maybe I'm totally off there, maybe this isn't Yellow Wolf type sound, but it just, this isn't doing it for me. I prefer what we were listening to at the beginning of the project. Maybe we'll get more of that as we close it out with the last two tracks. We got Fighting Fair up next.
white flash, stick in the stash. Party on lips, I'll kiss my ass and get to the cash. Big drip, drip, lip, wrist, that's quick to shit for speak too fast. We ain't fighting fair. Air it out, let the reaper speak a bang, bang, bang. Go to 100 shots, swinging off the chain. Let it bang, let it bang, let it sing. We ain't fighting fair. We ain't fighting fair. We ain't fighting
So that was Fighting Fair by JeRk. And I will say these tracks are definitely more what I would have expected from this, the title of the project, eGo, the cover art. This definitely fits the aesthetic that he was going for. I just don't think that he is as good in this lane as he is in the lane that we heard early on in this project, at least to me and my personal preferences. Now, I don't, that, again, that's another track that just wasn't for me. The hook really didn't do a whole lot for me. Lyrically, it was okay in some spots. In other spots, you probably will see some of the questionable faces I made at some of the questionable lines. It wasn't bad. There's just sometimes you get some corny stuff and some goofy stuff, but there were points in it where I thought this could be really cool. I was hoping it would be really cool, especially incorporating the Looney Tunes, Bugs. Like, you could do some really, really cool, interesting stuff with that potentially, visually down the line, but I don't think that was necessarily it for me. We got one final track, 6 Feet Whole, the final track on this project, before we wrap it all up and say how we felt about everything.
buried in the 6 feet. Well, I guess it's time to run through my empty past. Won't sugarcoat shit, this is actual fact. Abusive dad, drug habit, always mad. He was taking out his pain that he couldn't get past. It was day after day, year after year. Cried so many buckets, filled them all up with tears. Post-traumatic stress made a mess of my life for years. Antisocial, you were supposed to be one of the ones who cared. Don't be scared, nightmares, put my eyes wide open. Could you hear my screams if they weren't spoken? I don't even care if you die broken. You chose it.
That was 6 Feet Whole, the last track, final track, outro, if you will, to JeRk's upcoming release, eGo. I really liked that. I thought that was really dope, a good insight at what JeRk, like, just him, just getting to know him, I think, as more of a person than as an artist or anything like that. I think that was a really cool insight into him. I think that was a really well done track. I think that was a really good way to end your project, honestly. If you can end your project with a song that is my personal favorite JeRk song I've heard now, I like that, because this one I probably won't listen to as much as I will go back to Let's Talk About It once in a while. This one, though, you get to know and you get to see, like, a real side of him that I don't know we necessarily got in some of the middle part of this project. I think in the beginning you get to know, like, he's actually a genuinely cool dude. He's a pretty good guy. through the middle, I get what he's trying to present, and I appreciate that we're getting a different sound from him and maybe more of what you would expect from a hip hop sound. I think that JeRk could probably lean into a sound that maybe his peers might not, like his direct group or even himself, might not listen to a lot or listen to as much, but would probably be a great idea for him to focus more into, like we heard early on and at the end of that project. I think this is a really interesting project. I think production wise, there's some stuff that is left to be desired. I would love to see JeRk meet up with some of these artists who also do production and maybe collaborate with one of them a time or two and take in the knowledge that they're willing to give him. And I could see that being like a different type of thing for him, but I would love to see it because I think that could help his growth, because you see a lot of growth in this project. I really like the songs that I like. There's some songs that I really don't like, and that happens. I think that makes sense in music. Again, there's some stuff production wise that's left to be desired. Lyrically, there's not a ton that is awful, that is offensively bad, but again, there's not a ton that you're like, whoa. So, in the terms of that, again, it's a pretty solid project, but nothing to say is incredibly out of this realm. I think that this is a solid project for JeRk. I think that this gives people a good introduction to who he is. It's not very long, 23 minutes, easy to consume. He has some different sounds in here. I do think that the eGo name and presentation of the cover art doesn't necessarily fit what we heard here. This feels more like a small buffet, because it's not necessarily everything JeRk can do, but it is a variety of things he could do. He did some of the production. He did some just different sounds in this, some stuff that worked, some stuff that personally didn't work for me. So you can appreciate that from him as well, just as an artist trying different things. So in terms of that, I think that eGo is a pretty solid project. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I think that it's again. And I hope that JeRk doesn't take that as a diss at all. There's definitely just a lot of, not a lot, but there's enough songs on this one that really don't do it for me. But there are enough that also do it for me. Rider Like You, Let's Talk About It, the first two tracks, and then 6 Feet Whole at the end were both really good tracks that I liked a lot. I think that especially Flex, Baker Man didn't do a whole lot for me. Fake Love didn't do a lot for me. I liked the feature on Flex. I liked the verses on Flex, so I don't want to say that that's one of my least favorite songs. But some of these songs, I didn't like the hook. I didn't like the verse. I didn't really like a whole lot of anything. But a majority of them, I liked something. And some of them, I liked all of it. So in terms of that, we're going to give it a 6 out of 10. I do want to shout out JeRk. Tell him thank you for sending us the early copy, the physical copy of eGo. Make sure y'all reach out to JeRk and support the artist. Cop a physical copy of the product and give it a listen for yourself. Let us know. Maybe I'm totally off. I'm super fine with thinking that my musical opinion varies from other people's, and just because it doesn't do it for me might do it for you. So I do encourage you to, at the very least, give JeRk the 8 streams and listen to the project top to bottom and tell him what you think yourself. I do think that I've got a pretty good idea of what we've got here, but this is a pretty solid project. So that's why I think you should check it out. If it was absolutely garbage, I would tell you not to check it out at all. I don't think it's that at all. I think we're seeing growth here from JeRk, and I think that there's definitely some talent here. And shout out to JeRk. Thank you for sending in the project. Thank you guys for tuning in to the first Upstate visual review. If you guys liked it, make sure you share, make sure you like, make sure you comment, let me know. Even if it's just some emojis to let me know like this was an interesting thing and something you'd like to see us do going forward. If you have a project coming out in the near future, if you have one that just dropped, if you have one that dropped a year ago and you really just want to get somebody's opinion on it, send it in. But do know that this is going to be an honest opinion going forward, especially as you guys are now being told to send these in. Make sure you guys give JeRk the streams when it comes out, or send him I think it's only $5 to cop a physical copy, and I would tell you that it is worth paying $5 to listen to this project. So give it a shot. Till next time, thank you guys for tuning in to Upstate Reviews. Peace.